Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green. It's wonderful having you with me this morning. I just want to ask you a question. Have you been hypersensitive to emotions lately? Have you been struggling with just making choices, feeling very indecisive, not sure? When things don't often go your way? Do you find yourself losing control? Do you find yourself really battling a lot of anxiety? These type of questions. Have you found yourself in a place where it seems like your emotions are just taking over and you can't control them? Well, today's show is just for you. Some people are suffering with emotional conflict sensitivity. And you say, well, Dr. Deb, what is that? That is when your emotional mind literally takes over your logical mind. And it can come from very different factors, things that might have happened in your life, different experiences you might have went through that was really trying for you. Like it became a hardship where you're not so secure. You felt unsafe. So a lot of times when these things happen, we get stuck in our emotions. And we don't really know we're stuck there because most of the time is all it's volunteer, but then again, it's not. It's involuntary. It's just how our bodies are responding to trauma, to disappointment, feeling not in control of life, from external is what I'm saying, external things that are happening outside, people, places, things. Um, when we feel attacked by someone's words, someone's actions. So we get hypersensitive, and it's just a nervous system responding automatically. And you felt it before. You ever feel like get in an argument and you might feel tension or feel a little jittery, heat around the ears. Some people feel a choking sensation. Some people feel heaviness in their chest. Okay, those are the body's signals saying that the adrenaline was released from the brain and you're going into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And if this happens more often than most, your central nervous system literally gets used to going in the threat mode with or without your permission, because it's used to it's responding just to stimuli. Just responding. Stimuli is anything that you're thinking, anything that you're feeling, touching, whatever the case is. Because we experience the world through our senses, like what we see, what we touch, what we feel, what we taste. So I want to explore that a little bit with you because if you are emotionally sensitive to conflict, then your nervous system is really taking a beating. So I want to help you understand that a little bit better, and most of all, to come up with some preventive tips that you can do when you find yourself feeling really overwhelmed and in the moment. So sit tight, okay? Maybe grab a pen and pad. So if you have a light bulb moment, you will be able to jot those things down and reflect back on them later. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, all right. So go ahead and let's get started for today. The first thing, as I said, the topic today is emotional conflict sensitivity. Um, the battle between the mind and the heart. The battle between the mind and the heart. So, just kind of breaking it down in some logistics so that you can understand how we are wired. Okay, we're wired, hardwired, by the way. So, once we create a habit of responding to things, it automatically just keeps doing the same thing over and over again unless you change it. Now, mindfully, it takes 21 days to change a habit and 21 days to put one in place. And the 21 days is just a push off. So, which means that if you do something consistently within 21 days, then your brain is going to take you seriously. Now, within those 21 days, if you don't do it consistently, the brain won't take you seriously. And it's going to like, oh, he or she wasn't, serious because they started off for 3 or 4 days. Then they went right back to what they were doing. So the brain doesn't change. It only changes with repetitiveness and also with consistency. So, and we have to make a commitment for that. So as we are engaging, or as we are engaging upon life, because life is made to live, not just to exist or survive. Some people are in survival mode and not even knowing. Some people are existing and don't know it either. But living is a total different situation. Living comes with full responsibility, obligations to who? You. Not just to your children or your family or your husbands or your spouses, your significant others or your friends. No, you got to live for you first. Okay? I think a lot of times what we do is we look for everyone else and we don't make time for ourselves. And you're like, well, Dr. Deb, I got to do this because I'm responsible. Nobody else can do it but me. No, it's just that you've been doing it so long, you became an addictive caretaker. Yes, that's what I said. An addicted caretaker. All right. So before I get into emotional conflict, let me tell you what that is because that's a very component part of what I'm getting ready to let you know about. Okay. When we care about people, and I'm just talking about people now, okay? Not all these other things surrounding people, just people, because most of the time we are mostly, moved by people's actions. So when we care about people, it's two things to care, all right? You care about and you care for. You care about and you care for. When you care about someone, you care about them saying, okay, you can feed yourself, clothe yourself, you're able bodied. So I don't have to do those things for you. You're able bodied. And just so you know, a child as early as 8 years old can be able bodied. You don't have to feed them. You should be able to teach them how to feed themselves. I don't care if it's making sandwiches, to popping something in the microwave. Okay, give yourself a break. You don't have to cook dinner every night. Okay, help them help themselves, starting early in life. Okay, if you start early in life, so guess what happens? After a period of time, these people are very interdependent. Hello. Okay, they can take care of themselves and then they're going to want to work. Mommy, can I get a job? At 13 years old being a bag person or throwing newspapers in the neighborhood. Mommy, I'm going to make up my bed. Okay, start them off early. Okay, that way you don't get emotionally conflict with them as they get older. Okay, all right. So fast forward when we're dealing with adults. Okay, adults we again care about. We care about them if they can do those things I just told you. You can feed yourself, clothe yourself, take care of yourself. Then guess what? You good, right? All right. I should not be washing your clothes. If I'm cooking a meal, we both should share that meal of cooking. One day you do it, next day we do it. Okay, or vice versa. All right. I should not take on your emotional baggage. what you are struggling with emotionally, I should be able to listen. I should be able to confide, but I can't work that out for you because it's no longer mine. And it wasn't mine in the first place, okay? Even though I might have adopted it, because that's what we do. We go adopt emotional baggage that belongs to other people. Oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. And then if it's an argument between other people and other people, we get involved in that. Y'all done did that in families all the time. You start taking on other people's issues and they don't work out their issues and you still stuck in the rut. Oh, emotionally, sensitively conflicted. Okay, now you see where I'm going at with this story. Again, let me give you the other definition. Care for. We care for those people who cannot do the things I just told you. If they can't feed themselves, we assist them in eating. If they can't dress themselves, we assist them in dressing. And those people who may not have the mobility to take care of themselves. Okay. All right. Now you understand the two definitions of care for and care about. So why are you still taking care of these grown people? Why are you doing that? See, this is the thing. I mean, grown people. Okay, grown people could be husbands, significant others, grown children still living in the home, living out of the home. Okay, and you are emotionally distraught because guess what? You're empty. That's what we call the empty heart syndrome. Okay, I'm still talking about emotional conflict. I'm getting ready to bring my co-host on because I see her in the backstage. Here she is.
Well, Grand Rising.
Grand Rising, beautiful. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. As you were,
Awesome.
I was thinking of so many friends that I have that are struggling with grown sons that simply have not left the nest and have not grown up. And they're frustrated because they don't know what to do. And I see a pattern. They have a child who's still being taken care of, even though that child is in their 40s. And I know that the root cause is basically how they condition that child to be dependent and never made them go through those steps of taking responsibility during childhood. If you never had them help you with the meal when they were, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, if you never had them pick up after themselves when they were, just learning how to walk and talk, and you never made them pick up their toys, you fussed about it, but you still did it yourself. You never had them go and get a job when they were in their teen years and want to buy all these fancy clothes, but you never made them be responsible for earning their own money for it. So if you
Right.
never made them take responsibility during those years, and then suddenly you look up and they're 18 and they're graduated from high school and they're still hanging around the house and you're still doing all the grocery shopping and paying all the bills and you're fussing about it, but you still do it. And they hang around and they want to get high and hang out with their friends and watch TV all day, and you fuss about it, but they're still there and you can't do anything about it. And it just goes on and on and on,
Yeah.
and they're grown, and they might
Yeah.
even have produced children somewhere that they're not living with or taking care of, and they're still up in your house, and you can't figure out how do I make this grown man grow up. It's just things that didn't happen along the way, and now you look at it and it's a pattern of dependency. I have
Well,
so many.
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. This is very common amongst families. Very, very common, especially American families, because usually different cultures don't really do this.
Yeah,
Asian
you're at a certain
Asian
age, you're expected
cultures
to be
Asian
grown.
cultures don't do this. No,
No.
it's just American life type of things. So when I was looking into it, I was looking at the way, like you say, people are raised, but most of all, what causes a person to really struggle with emotional conflict sensitivity. And it's because there's so many factors. That's just one factor. dealing with codependency, because that's what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also not bring your child up to be totally interdependent. Interdependent means I'm in the family, but I'm still independent. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm not. Because codependency is when a parent is trying to live through their children. That's just one factor. Also, when there is a person's actions and behaviors are subject to another person, and they make those decisions for those people, and
Mm.
think that we call it smothering, we call it the helicopter mom or dad, one of those things. And the thing about this is, because that's how they were raised. They were raised the same way. So then it puts all of these things that affect the emotional sensitivity of a person. And then they get really hypersensitive to abandonment, rejection, separation. Oh, you don't love me. Here comes that word, right? Um,
Mm.
you don't understand what I need. Hello. Guess what? I can't give you what you need. You have to give yourself what you need. So when these things start happening and people start going through this, they're becoming extremely hypersensitive to another person's actions and behavior. So, and then they get affected by it, and those affects start to
Yeah.
cause mental and emotional disorders, whether they realize it or not. And your personalities start to change, because your being is hardwired. Like I was saying earlier, we're hardwired. So which means whatever you start off doing, if you do it with a repetitiveness, if you're doing the same things over and over and over again, you're literally creating a habit. Whether
Yeah.
you realize it or not, you're creating a habit, and that habit is going to turn into addiction if you're not careful.
Mm.
So when you were talking about why they realize that the habit that they created turning into the addiction over the years of how they are living. See, it's not so much the children that are being affected. It is what the parents are creating in the children that are being affected. That's the way it works. Because
Yeah.
parents have to create things for children. Remember, we were born here not knowing anything. The only thing we knew is how to put something in our mouth and taste it and say, "Oh, that tastes good, tastes bad." That's all we knew. We came through with our senses. So all of the other stuff of
Learn.
life, it was a learned behavior that was handed down from ancestors as well as, parents, because they got it from our ancestors. And then
Right.
it goes on and on, unless someone comes to an area and say, "Wait a minute, that needs to be changed." Okay, so how do we change that? By doing something different. But you
Yeah.
can't do it just once or twice. You got to do it all the time, right? Okay. So these hypersensitive areas that people deal with, I want to really focus on those things. And these are called conflicts. Okay. And
Mm.
conflicts can only be solved with resolution, not answers.
Mm.
Only resolution, right? So we have conflicts of the heart. Let's start there. Conflicts of the heart will be anger, guilt, shame, remorse, grief. That's what the conflicts of the heart. Now, those things then start emotional roller coasters, right? If you really think about it, if let's just take anger. Okay. Anger, if not settled, if not finalized from the root, like you said,
Mm.
because anger is just a signal to the brain to, hey, we need to do something different, because it just seems like something's brewing down here. When the heart is creating an issue from that circumstance, that experience, or whatever it is that's on the outside of that person, or something that happened in their childhood that's still a residue that's building up and has been there for years, that have been building up in the heart. Okay. The heart is just sending these emotional messages to the brain. Can we deal with the conflict? Okay, the brain is either going to do one or two things. Either it's going to be aware, or it's like, oh no, I don't want to deal with that. Push it back down. Okay. All right. So if awareness comes, I'm ready to face my fear. Okay, I'm ready to deal with this. I'm ready to talk about this. I'm ready to sample. I call it sampling. Sampling. All right, what is this coming from? Why did this, where did this begin? Start pulling it out, sampling. That's called mental process.
Mm.
Okay, and we are doing that, then we are then going to find what is called a resolution. You cannot find a resolution if you're not ready to face fear, sample, analyze, and process. It just doesn't happen. Because guess where it's going to go back to? The heart. The
Yeah.
heart is the one that holds the issues. It carries, it's not just that organ that pumps blood throughout the body, it holds all of your emotional issues concerning your life. Isn't that amazing? Okay.
Mm.
But even the heart gets tired, Naima. It gets full. Sometimes when people look like when they talk, they look like they're about to choke from tears. They can't even
Yeah.
tears start. Oh, well, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Before the tears start rolling and they're telling a story of what's going on in their life, and there's this, you could just see the heart welding. It's like, oh my God, I'm so happy you're finally talking about it. Oh, because I've been holding it for years and years and years. You're talking
Yeah.
about it. And so the tears just keep rolling and rolling. That's the heart and the mind communicating. Most people think tears is a bad thing. No, it is a very good thing because you are relieving your being. Thank God
Mm.
for tears. I had some patients that come to me and they said, I haven't cried in years and I want to cry. I don't even
Wow.
know what that feels like.
They've been holding it in.
And so that's because, yes, they've been suppressing because the emotional conflict is also dealing with suppression. No, I don't want to go there moment. No, I don't want to talk about it. I put it to the back of my mind. Where do you think that energy is going? The
Mm.
back of the mind, when it gets full, it's going to drain into your heart. And when it
Wow.
finishes draining into your heart, it's going to drain into your body. And
Wow.
here comes conflict. Conflict in the heart, conflict in the mind, conflict in the body. We call conflict in the body sickness. Okay?
Mm.
All right. We were talking about this where I, employed, there. We were, and I said, oh, I got to give them this message today because once we had a group of about 12 people, and every one of them had the heart conflict, every last one,
Wow.
and they were dealing with it for years. Most of the times, people don't know they're conflicted in their heart because they don't. If you don't have a self-awareness, emotionally available for yourself, it's hard for you to know when you're conflicted. All you know is I'm dealing with it. Or I've heard that story over and over. I thought I dealt with it. I thought I say, well, what happened when you dealt with it? What's happening in yourself? What do you feel from day to day if you thought you dealt with it? Do you still feel sorrow? Do you still feel what is it? What's those emotions that just pop up in your mind or in your heart that you thought you dealt with? Okay.
Mm.
All right. Okay. Your being will let you know if you have finalized. Otherwise, you will stay conflicted, and emotional conflicted issues linger for years.
Wow. Just stay there. Mm.
Years.
Well, I got a question, but I know we got to take a break in a moment. Is the pattern that I see with so many friends of mine that are struggling with children and primarily sons, it's the pattern with that just got stuck at a certain emotional age and never seemed to progress. Generally, there was a divorce, split where the father left the home or left the relationship and is not actively involved in the day-to-day raising of the son. And if that divorce happened when the child, before they were reached puberty, at whatever age the divorce happened, it's as if the child stayed at that emotional age, and the mother would seem to try to overcompensate for the father's absence. And so she would do everything for her son, do everything, buy him everything, show that I don't need no man, so she's working two jobs, she's doing all this, being super mom. And yet that seemed to have had a crippling effect on the young man growing up into a responsible adulthood. And so now she looks up and he's a grown man, still asking her for money, still um, living at home, still not being able to commit in his relationships, and again may have even produced several children with women that he could not commit to. And he's dodging child support, and just the whole thing just didn't grow into that manhood. And what she does is gets angry and frustrated, you just like your father, you're no good, and all that does is just recreate the pattern. But it's her anger and guilt that maybe kept her from, I don't know, helping him evolve in the way he needed to, because she felt like she had to show herself she didn't need that other partner. And yet the absence of the father is what kept the boy, the son, from seeing what manhood looks like. And all he knows is that women work really hard and take care of men, because that's what his mother demonstrated. So that's the pattern that I see. And maybe we can address, some of the emotional issues in the women that cause them to create that pattern unknowingly. And then,
Right.
how do you fix it?
Mm-hmm. All
So
right.
we'll
We'll take a stab at that after we come back from break.
All righty. And if you're listening online and want to join this conversation, give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press 1. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, Soulful Solutions, make sure you like, share, subscribe. And if you've got questions, just write them in. We'll share them with our listening and viewing audience. And we will be right back after this quick break. So stay with us.
We have an opportunity to transform the whole global society in the next 50 years. 50 years from now, the earth will be populated by a new generation of adults, many of whom are yet unborn. Our mission is to nurture them in childhood with love, guidance, and protection, and to raise them in healthy, happy families. If we impart values of compassion, generosity, and respect for fellow human beings in the next generation of children, they will create a world where people can live together in peace. This is our goal. Be a part of the transformation. Get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. Go to www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. Do you want to live in a world without war? Join our global peace movement. Heavenly Culture World Peace Restoration of Light transcends culture, religion, ideology, and other boundaries to achieve peaceful harmony in the global society. HWPL is committed to bringing world peace and cessation of war through peaceful dialogue between religious groups. I am Director Shin-Suk Kim of the HWPL Chicago branch of North America. Join us for our next gathering. Call 773-580-1501 and be a part of the movement for world peace. Email us at chicagohwpl@gmail.com. Hey, it's time to take charge of your health. I'm Viata, your holistic life coach, and every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'm here on the Female Solution to empower you to make choices that will assist your evolution to abundant health. I'm also blogging every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Soul Purpose Healing, where I bring you a spiritual chiropractic adjustment to bring you back into alignment with our Creator's love, compassion, and wisdom. Join me every Friday morning at 8 a.m. and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. for a time of unity, enlightenment, and love vibration. Shalom.
Okay. Welcome back to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green with my wonderful co-host Naima Latif, our executive producer of the Female Solution. And our topic of today is emotional conflict sensitivity, the battle between the mind and the heart.
Mm.
Yeah. Every time I
Right.
say that, I'm like, it's so surreal though. I can't even express to you how many people are in conflict right now. And I mean, uh hmm. It is something ciphered through. You really have to check your being and say, am I in conflict in that area? I mean, because this is something I do, before I even come up with any type of topic information, I've already tested it. I already went through it myself and also have, expressed it to clients as well as my patients. And then, yeah, yeah, we need to really take a closer look at that because you can live in conflict and don't even know that you're conflicted, and we call it self-conflicted in those areas. And the example that you were just talking about with your friend and her son, oh, that's definitely conflict. That's conflicted. That's called self-conflicted dealing with relationships. That's what that is. So I only see one resolution with that. I see many options, but only one resolution. One resolution is that she has to change the way she's responding to him. And the other options is to really approach him with different ways so it doesn't seem harsh that she's letting him go. That's the resolution is that she has to let him go emotionally in her heart. Not, and when I say that, Naima, some people say, well, are you telling me to stop loving someone? No, that's not what I'm saying. Love and addictive love does not mix. Addictive love is codependency. That's what it
Mm.
is. They don't mix. You love someone from an unconditional platform. And that's
Mm.
hard because that takes sacrifice. And it also takes letting go techniques, right? So when you have a problem of holding on to people,
Mhm.
that's going to be difficult for you, and that's what she's experiencing. Her issue is that I got to take care of him. I got to. She probably was thinking about this ever since he was born, and then when she went through whatever she went through with her husband, then she really started grabbing hold tightly, not
Yeah.
realizing it was too tight. Not, I got to
Yeah.
make sure you do this. I got to make sure you do that. You got to, and then she's probably looking at it as a perfectionism, within herself. As I'm
Yeah.
a good mother if I
Yeah.
do this, if I do that.
I
I'm
got
not a
two.
good mother if I don't do this and don't do
Yeah.
that. And here we go. And it just starts to domino effect. And before she realizes, she has interrupted his life because now he is not what they call an adult. He's a child adult. A
Yeah.
child adult literally doesn't make a lot of choices that are wise. They make choices that are more impulsive because they don't think with the
Yeah.
logical mind. They still think with the emotional mind. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's because
That's
there was no independence taught teaches you to be more logical than emotional, if that makes sense.
So something didn't happen in one of whatever stages of growth they should have gone through, and it at whatever point a son usually disconnects from his mother and takes that leap into independent manhood. It didn't happen, and as you say, she's making sure, oh, I take care of him. And that's one thing when he's like 7, and then maybe when he's 12, something else should have happened that didn't. And now, he's 18 and it still didn't happen. And now he's 25 and he's still 7 emotionally because she's still taking care of him. But now she's angry because he didn't develop into that man that she wanted him to be. But whatever was supposed to happen to make that happen didn't happen in their home because she was still the super mom taking care of him, doing everything. So
Right.
what should women be doing, even if they're single mothers? What should they be doing to foster that independence and competence to take care of oneself? Because what I see is a lot of rebellious male teens who may be living with single moms, and the mother's frustrated, I can't do anything with him, he won't act right, he won't do what I tell him. And I think maybe the rebellion is whatever attempt that is for the son to grow into manhood. But like you say, they make poor choices, they make destructive choices, they want to do things that are hurtful because they don't have guidance as to what manhood looks like from a positive perspective, but they know that they should be less dependent on their mothers. And yet whatever expression of aggression, manhood, assertiveness, whatever it is, it ends up being negative and self-destructive. It's hanging out with the friends, it's doing illegal things, it's
Yeah.
doing personal self-harm things, drugs, alcohol, it's womanizing, it's all of these things that they may see other men do that are not their fathers or men who are guiding them to a healthy manhood.
Right.
All they
Hmm.
know, and it's their way of disconnecting from their mother, but it's not helping them grow up in a strong way, in a positive way. So what should the mother be doing, especially if her child has reached that stage of rebellion and she realizes that she doesn't have the control over him that she wanted to? Should she be trying to control him, or should she be maybe find some
Well,
different
it's too.
guidance for him?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, everything you just said is just him learning from the world. See, when a man child, which is a boy, right, doesn't grow up with a father that is a father that knows that he's a they have good traits and good personality and characteristics of a good father. Then if he's not taught that, then he learns it from the world. You see what I'm saying? He learns it from social media. He learns
Yeah,
it from what he sees. And then that's what those behaviors, everything you just told me, is just from the outside of himself, right? So it's important that our children grow up with both components, Naima. Both parental influencers were put together for a reason so the child can grow up balanced. So when that is not done, then again, if it rather is a boy not having a father, a girl not having a mother, it's still the same thing. They're going to learn it from the world, right?
yeah,
So whoever the existing parent, nuclear parent, grandmama, auntie, or whoever, uncle that's raising this child has to make sure they have some strong mentors more so than them. If it's like I say, in the situation you're talking about, she should find a mentor system. But see, the damage has already been done. You got to understand this. He's already a man. So whatever just emotional, I call it hit state, he's already suffered, is already etched into the brain. You see what I'm saying?
Mm,
So he's frustrated with life, you know, he's frustrated because of, not having those components. It's a good chance that because he did not have a relationship with his dad, he's angry. And so his
yeah.
anger comes out in behavior. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Um,
Yes.
when she's trying to talk to him, he's rebellious because he doesn't know how to deal with his anger. He doesn't know
Yeah.
how to filter through it. So he gets whoever's in the bullseye gets the hit. That's the way it
Yeah.
works. And
Yes.
that frustration, agitation, irritation turns into resentment, discord, confusion, even rage. You know what I'm saying? Rage is in many different ways: yelling, screaming, slamming doors, leaving home. You don't know where they are. Binging may go and, might be looking for a compensation, which is drugs, alcohol, promiscuousness. I mean,
Right.
it goes on and on and on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the damage is already done. That's the reason why I said to you, the only way that she can bow out, she's going to have to move out of the way and allow life to deal with him. Now, it's only a few, outcomes this is going to have. Either he's
Mm,
going to get the hard knocks, which is he
mm,
gonna get tired of bumping his head real hard, getting real close to, life tragedy areas for him to realize, or life may send him a wonderful thing, because sometimes that happens too. Life sends somebody and say, "Hey man, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to go this direction." Sometimes that happens too, but she can't do it. She cannot do it.
good.
So she has to give him ultimatums. Hey, you got to get a job. I'm gonna give you this how much time to go ahead and get a job, to do what you have to do. And if you can't do that, then that's going to be a problem. That's
Yeah.
going to be a
I mean,
problem.
I've seen it so often. Mothers are at
Yeah.
their wit, and they say, if you don't get a job, you got to get out of here, and they say it and threaten it, but then they feel awful at the thought of putting their child out in the street, even though their child might be in their 20s, 30s, even 40s, and just not productive in life, and not motivated, and not seeming to know how to manage their life. And again, these are grown men who are sexually intimate with women and producing children that they are, but they're not forming families with these women. So what they have done is create another broken or unformed family somewhere, where there's another child that's going through the same trauma that they experienced, of having to be raised with a mother without the help of a father. And the pattern continues, and something has to change the pattern. And I don't know if we need more mentors, more mentoring programs, but it's as if, the like you were saying, other cultures aren't doing this. It's as if the disruption of the family unit has created an ongoing cycle where the next generation continues to disrupt the family unit,
Right. Yeah.
and we're not raising
That's
our
it.
children in the context of repeating the pattern of a family structure. Because once we disrupt the family structure with a divorce, then we don't have the example of how two life partners work together in the raising of children, and guiding them to a healthy adulthood. So like you say, the children learn from the streets, the daughter learns from the streets, the son learns from the streets. Now in situations, sometimes the female child will be a little more successful because she's got the example of a strong mother working and taking care of herself. She has the example of a female being independent, but she doesn't have the example of a female in a healthy relationship. So she may, uh, career wise, excel, but she still ends up in a broken relationship because she hasn't seen how to choose someone who is emotionally healthy enough to be a life partner that has learned responsibility. But she might excel in her career and finish school and all of that, but she's
Well,
still in
see,
the same cycle.
yeah, absolutely. That's because there's a conflict. See, you everything you just discussed is when people are in conflict, and some know it and some don't, because people tend to live in a conflicted mindset and conflicted emotions. And again, whatever one adapts to becomes a habit. That's what it is. So, the again, we are not perfect people. We have been split up in generations on top of generations. So these splits are these separational mindsets, from our loved ones, from our families. It's just a replica of what we've been dealing with for the last 400 years. Okay, so we went over that last week when we were talking about ancestral mathematics of how we
Yeah.
get the generations of dysfunctions continue to go down the pipeline. Okay, so again, the conflict is real, right? Because the struggle is real, and we're still dealing with these same conflicted issues. Like you said, the cycling of the same things over and over and over again. So some will know and some won't know. Some is going to stay in conflict because of their inability to be, again, emotionally mature enough to know, causing the conflict within myself. Am I passing on the conflict to another human being? But you don't know if you're not emotionally mature enough to know that. And there is such thing as emotional maturity. We think that mental maturity will, give us the signs. Oh yeah, you're doing something wrong, but not all the time. Not all the time, because we get hooked in things through our emotional centers. We feel things more than we think things, and that's normal. But every time we think something, there's a thought present, but that doesn't mean we're paying attention to that thought, because feelings
Mm.
are stronger, emotions are way stronger energies than thought processes. So as we feel through life, which is dangerous, people, I'm so sorry, it's not an option. If you don't stop feeling through life, you will never notice your errors and your conflicts. You will always keep adapting to them. Logically, if you see something that's, you say, why does this keep happening? Okay, that's your red flag. And something is happening that's not productive, that's not useful or brings you joy in your life, is something that you need to pay attention to, because that is a trigger, that is the emotional trigger that is bringing you to a awareness that you need to change something about how you're living. Don't blame it on another human being. We constantly point fingers. We'll always stay a victim. And
Yeah.
they doing this to me. They did this. They don't understand me. If you notice, every time you do this, I know my mom used to say, when you point a finger, you got
Four
three
point.
pointing back at you. You know what I'm saying? She said, well, that's because you are the issue. It is not the person that you think is the issue. Most people do that. It's called scapegoating, right? So
Yeah.
when we do that, we will never solve the conflict. The conflict will always be somebody else's fault, somebody else's stuff. But where did the trigger come from in you emotionally in the first place? If you're being triggered emotionally, you get upset when things don't go your way, when somebody don't say what you want them to say, someone doesn't do what you want them to do, you get upset. You go from 0 to 100 real fast, to the point where you just want to blurt out to the world, you did this to me. What kind of person are you? Okay, here we go into that victim. It always goes back to enslaved emotional thinking. I call it that, enslaved emotional thinking.
Mm.
So I can't break free out of these walls if I'm constantly building them up. What's going on with that picture? How can I constantly break? How can I get free if I'm always building it up. So who is the culprit here? Who is the worst enemy?
So
I am.
if a person is stuck in that pattern, that's
That's a habit.
it's a habit, and it pretty much guarantees that any personal relationship you get in, you will destroy because you are not able to adequately manage anger or express feelings in a way that's not attacking. You're not able to self examine and self correct. So if a person is stuck in that way of thinking and behaving, any personal relationship they form, eventually they will destroy because of those habitual behaviors that they can't even see in themselves. Because, like you say, it's always somebody else's fault. They don't see what they did to contribute to it, either by the way they addressed a conflict or the way they responded to somebody who did something they didn't like, or their inability to work toward a resolution, as opposed to just wanting to spew out an attack because they're angry. So again, I see the pattern of, and you know, women, we got to look at each other, because we, if we change some things that we're doing, we can change the trajectory of what we keep reproducing. But if we're going into our relationships wounded and angry, and then because we're creating the conflict because of the way we're responding, because we're already carrying anger from wounds that never healed from our own childhood, then we end up destroying the relationship, or choosing someone who is also emotionally unhealthy in the first place because they're basically mirroring our own lack of emotional health. Then we end up in that same cycle, raising the child by ourselves, angry about that, and disabling the child from evolving into a healthy adulthood. And so that child goes out, and if it's a male child, creating a child with someone who is also equally un, unevolved emotionally into adulthood, and they're also not. So therefore, they've got another child somewhere going through the same thing. If they're a female, going out selecting somebody who was not emotionally developed into adulthood, having a child with that person. Now they're carrying the same burden of having to be that single parent, trying to do everything, and crippling the child from developing into maturity. So I mean, this pattern has, we can look back several generations and see
That's
it.
where it comes from. It comes from
And
several
everybody's
generations
blaming
back.
everybody, but nobody's taking responsibility for their part in it. And
And I
you know, it's,
don't
it's easy for
I
us as
don't
women to
want
blame
us
men
to
for,
think.
what
Okay,
they're doing.
sorry for interrupting you. I don't want people to think that we are saying that people are not raising don't know how to raise their children. It's just that whatever the parental influencers, it could be women or men that's raising children. You have to look at the longevity of raising a child. Most
Yeah,
people look from day to day. Okay, no, you got to look down the line. What kind of person that you want to enhance, not create. You can't create a child. A
yeah,
child was
you're
already created in a womb. Okay,
right.
it's going to grow, right? It's going to grow into an adult. That's all you need to know, right? So out of those areas, your goal is to make sure as much as humanly possible that this child has an emotional stable, a mature mind. Now, emotions will not be intact until they are 24 years old, just so you know, right? So you got a long period of time because the logical mind and emotional mind is not totally developed until you're 24 years old. And that's the reason why you see kids, adolescents, even young adults just look like, you're like, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, because they have not developed yet. So here comes that thing called trauma. If they ever had
Mm,
any trauma, trauma is abuse, crisis, disappointment in their
mm,
lives at early ages, between as early as 2, I'll say, to 17. Any trauma in that area is going to complicate those precisional structures from developing appropriately in the mind. I'm not talking about the brain. I'm talking about the
Mm.
mind, the unconscious, subconscious, conscious areas. Okay? Ego processes totally change when it comes to trauma. So now they're not as emotionally stable. So when parents, and I'm talking to parents, if someone's not in the home, like if there's a missing parent, missing mom, missing dad, okay, guess what? Child is going to suffer trauma automatically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Automatically, right? So
Yeah.
we as other parents, as the stable parent, I got the mother and father of my child. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's impossible because we know that some mothers who raised, I know a mother that raised four boys, and those four boys are accurate, and she wasn't missing a beat. But boy, did she have to work, right? And also men that raised girls, and they were successful. But even in the midst of it all, a lot of them, they were successful, like you said, in their careers, but they didn't have a component of emotional maturity.
That's it.
So now their relationships are
Mm-hmm.
affected because
Yes.
you got to remember they grew up half, didn't have
Yeah.
the whole. So they
That's
grew up half. When you grow up half, you struggle with relationships. It's just
yeah.
a normal pattern
Yes.
because you don't have both the components to give you
Right.
wholeness.
Right. And I
You
think
see?
that's something that we have to acknowledge. As
Yes,
common as single
absolutely.
parenting is, you have to realize what's missing is going to be missing in your child's life, the ability to see how to manage an intimate emotional relationship with another partner. They're not seeing the example of what that looks like. So yes, they might finish school, higher education, get a great job, have a great career, buy a car, all
Everything.
those things that we
That's
deem as
right.
success, but their personal relationship will suffer because they didn't have that wholeness. And knowing that when
And
we,
within them,
yeah, within
and
themselves,
within themselves.
they will feel what's missing. We got to take another break. And if you're on our switchboard now and have a comment, feel free to press one. If you're listening online and want to join the conversation, give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press one. If you would like to join us visually, you can go to Soulful Solutions on YouTube and make sure you subscribe so you can get regular notices whenever Dr. Debbie goes live. And if you're watching us on Facebook, make sure you like and share. And we'll be right back after this quick break. So stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back in just a moment. So stay with us.
Have you ever dreamed of going to exotic places, meeting fascinating people, enjoying uplifting music, and spending nights in a luxurious hotel? Do you look forward to a relaxing vacation where you can walk along the beach or sit in a quiet park and enjoy the sunset or sunrise? Whether you're flying around the world or driving across the country, we will share travel tips that will help you stay safe while you enjoy the journey. Join me every third Saturday of the month, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, and move around with Deborah here on the Female Solutions Show. Call in and comment 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak. Hi, I'm Mama Joy. And I'm Mother Rosemary. Join us every second Saturday of the month, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Time, here on the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. transform, making a positive difference in the world. Watch us every day on The Media Connection at www.youtube.com/The Media Connection TV. YouTube it. We'll see you soon. There are people who choose to make a positive difference in the world. Our job is to bring you their stories to motivate you to do the same. Join us each week, host John Alexander and Naima Latif, as we bring you the educators, entertainers, elected officials, religious leaders, and community activists whose works are transforming this world. Find out how you can make a difference too. Be inspired. Watch The Media Connection. Mondays at 5 p.m. and Tuesdays at 12 noon on cable TV, Channel 19 in Chicago. In other cities, check your local cable listings.
All right, all right. Welcome back to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green with my wonderful co-host Naima Latif, our executive producer of the Female Solution. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about emotional conflict sensitivity in our lives. Dealing with people, dealing with ourselves, and how our body responds to emotional trauma, because that's exactly what it is. The overall, information about it all, again, is emotional maturity and knowing that regardless of where you find yourself, if you're not emotionally mature enough for yourself and to realize what's going on in your life, it's hard for you to help or assist anyone else. So when we were last speaking, you were talking about how people are successful in their careers. They have topped the industries, but if you ask them a question, amongst themselves, one on one, you can say, "Who are you? And how do you feel about yourself?" Just those two questions. So, and you tell them, "I don't need you to answer that question from the outside, not with social norms, titles, credentials, but I want you to answer those questions from the inside."
Yeah.
That if they can do that successfully, then they are emotionally matured. Most people struggle with that right there. They struggle with the self identity. We have a self identity that we have with self awareness. And then we also have an emotional identity. I feel this about myself, or I think this about myself. You see what I'm saying? Those are two different things. They're two different. And so one should know the difference between that. And you should know your weaknesses, you should know your faults and your strengths. Because there's no human being that I know or anywhere in the world that does not have strengths, weaknesses, and faults.
Mm.
They're
You
all there.
yeah. One thing that I see also, and maybe this is something that every couple should plan on, uh, if they're planning a long-term relationship, planning on marriage, family, and all that sort of thing, is to really get some counseling on conflict resolution, because
Hmm.
usually whatever insecurities a person has surfaces in that love relationship, and this is why it ends in such bitterness, where you don't know how to simply resolve a difference without all of your insecurities surfacing, and then you end up attacking the other person because of what still is inside of yourself. And what used to be expected is that, well, if women, and a lot of cultures still teach this, well, if women would just be quiet and be submissive and do what her husband says, then there'll be no problems.
Hmm.
Well, then you're asking a grown woman not to be a grown woman. She's not a child. And we accepted that thought for a long time, and it's very damaging because it produces men who learn how to be abusive. And that's not the same thing as learning how to resolve a conflict with your partner.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that that not working, and you have a lot of women now uh, are super aggressive in perhaps reacting to what they may have seen or perceived as weakness in their mothers not standing up for themselves. And so they take the other end of the pendulum and become very, very aggressive, um, even attempting to be controlling, very combative. And so that still is not conflict resolution. So you got two people trying to come at each other with aggression.
Right.
I think on the Tuesday show we were talking about male and female traits. So you have two forces where both aggressive and conflicting, and so that relationship doesn't last
Mm-mm.
because they haven't learned how to have enough confidence in themselves to allow a person to express themselves and express a difference without attacking them and or feeling attacked, and so eventually the relationship is destroyed. And so now you've got this broken family where the children then do not learn healthy conflict resolution. They do not learn how to make healthy choices. They are wounded, like you say, no matter how hard the mother works or how hard the father works, whichever one is the single parent, you still can't heal the wound of them not having that sense of wholeness because of that partnership that was supposed to raise them is broken. So we're reproducing broken people generation after generation. And if we could just learn conflict resolution and learn to face whatever childhood traumas that are still within us, no matter how in love we are, they're going to surface in your marriage. They're going to surface in your relationship. And just marrying somebody doesn't make it go away. Women think, oh, if you just marry me. No, because if you got problems and he got problems, they're not going to disappear just because you get married.
Correct.
They escalate and then you still end up breaking up. So, that's not the answer. And so we have to learn how to resolve conflicts in a healthy manner, which is probably not going to be how our parents handled it, the reason why we're wounded. If they handled it where they had a knockdown, drag out fight, and then, the mother cowered in the corner and just shut up, or, that's not it either. Or maybe the father just let himself get verbally bashed and beat down until he just went, left the house and got drunk, came back home, and that was it. That's not it either. So, however unhealthy way our parents may have handled conflict that caused a wound in us, we don't want to repeat that. We need to learn healthy ways, which means we need to get some professional counseling and learn how to, in a mutually respectful way, resolve conflict. That's a skill that couples are not learning before marriage, and many of them just don't have access to healthy marriage counselors. And I'm not saying the pastor of your church may not have skills, but if they were not trained as a marriage counselor, they don't have the skills. Just quoting
Right.
scripture, that's not counseling. I love you all,
Right.
pastor, but if you don't know if you know you don't have the skills and just admonishing a woman, obey your husband, that's not counseling. So you have to help people with their inner childhood traumas so that they
Right.
work through them and not destroy their relationship in the
Hmm.
process.
Yes. It's very important. Again, it all takes emotional maturity. That's all it
Yes.
is. Otherwise, like you said, those two components are going to be going at it. The storm will calm, and then it'll come back. Because guess what? It's not resoluted. It's not. The conflict is there. It just keeps. And every time it comes back, it gets bigger and bigger. So it doesn't die down. It doesn't
Yeah.
completely go away. You can pretend like it's all right. And it's funny that you would even be talking about that particular situation, because I have a client right now. Her and her significant other is, they're constantly, one minute they're happy, next minute they're tearing at each other, cursing each other out and disrespecting each other. And they're just this pattern just constantly keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And I told her, I said, all right, you came to me because you had depression and anxiety, but it ain't going to get any better if you're constantly colliding with your significant other. You're
Right.
colliding. That's called emotional colliding when people just constantly, I call it like, that's what like a symbol. You just,
Yeah.
because it's just going to keep doing it. It's just going to keep doing it. And then one day it's going to do it so ferociously that, God forbid somebody really get injured because of the impulse moves. Because when one is impulsive in their emotions, they may say or do something that they really, really regret. And
Yeah.
then it's too late because you've already said it, you already done it. So, again, one has to have an emotional maturity. One of you got to be the grown up, okay, as I would say, and stop the going back and forth, confrontation and arguing, because again, that is not going to help the situation. It's just going to tear you down. It's going to tear
Right.
your being down. It's going to make you eventually hate each other because that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Because you
Yeah.
know what? There's no resolution. There is no mutual respect. All the
Right.
mutual respect is out the door because with conflict resolution, you have two parties or a group of people that in conflict, they don't think the same. And it's all emotional. Every last bit of it is I'm emotional about what you are saying or what you are doing. So the only way to gain some type of leverage is that you have to go back and be assertive communication more so than responding with emotions and
Yeah.
victim mentality. Because you doing this to me, you saying this to me, you're tearing me down, you're doing this. If you're constantly a victim, you will never be assertive. You're just going to
Absolutely.
be either aggressive, passive, passive aggressive, but no, you won't be assertive, and you're just going to stay irritated. Now
Yes.
you're living with a person that you don't want to lay by. You don't want to. It makes you irritable just watching them eat.
Mm.
And when you get to that
Always
level,
mad. They can't do nothing right because you're holding on to anger and not not
when
expressing it.
you get to that level now, when you can't stand to watch a person eat, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
that's
over.
when you. That is a huge red flag that it is over. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So
But we will stay in a relationship way too long without addressing why we're angry because we
whew,
have how to address why we're angry. We haven't learned the words or the tone to use. And then the other person, if you've got somebody that's so hypersensitive to any kind of criticism, then they're not allowing you to express any kind of discontent. So there you have two people who won't talk about what's bothering them. And then the only way they address it is when it explodes, when somebody just can't take it anymore. And then, like you say, you end up saying things that can't be taken back, calling bad names that should never come out of your mouth towards someone you say you love, and all kinds of things. And then, if you're in the presence of children, you've traumatized them because they've watched this very unhealthy conflict that could even turn violent. And even if it doesn't turn physically violent, it was so emotionally abusive. Then they're learning bad ways of expressing discontent, you know, cussing out each other, calling each other names, threatening to kill each other, all horrible kind of things that you expose to your children. So then they're damaged. How will they know how to resolve conflicts in a healthy manner when what you've demonstrated is how to attack and how to endanger someone that you say you love? So here we go, setting a bad example. And most of us that grew up with bad examples, when we get into intimate relationships, we have to unlearn those patterns or unlearn those expectations and relearn healthy ways of conflict resolution. Because there's always conflict, but you have to know how to resolve it in a healthy way. That's what's not being taught. It's definitely not learned in our homes, and it's only learned in our religious institutions if those religious leaders have the training and the skills, which generally they don't, because that's not really part of training as a religious leader. You learn all the scriptures, but knowing how to deal as a counselor, as a therapist, as somebody who can recognize the lingering childhood trauma, if you have not had training in that, you really are not equipped
Right.
to a marriage counselor in the way that people need. You don't
Yes.
have skills. And I've seen people give horrible advice, really horrible advice, when someone is in a relationship where it's abusive. And they'll tell the one, well, if you would just talk softly. No, this man has a problem. He wants to slap her upside the head if she expresses an opinion. It's not about her speaking softly. You got to deal with, why is he traumatized? Why is he unable to hear someone who has a differing opinion? What hostility is he holding? And when men have conflicts with their mothers, that's going to come out in their relationship with their wives. If women have conflicts with their fathers, it's going to come out in their relationship with their husbands. And someone has to have training to be able to recognize these things and help people work through them, so they can help them unlearn unhealthy behaviors. Otherwise, you just end up having somebody stay in a bad relationship that's emotionally and sometimes even physically abusive out of guilt, because, well, the church says divorce is bad. But
Right. Mm-hmm.
if you don't get out of something that's hurting you, then all you do is just re-traumatize the children who are watching this unhealthy relationship. I've,
Right.
I've seen people
Yes.
stay in
And
marriages
again, as I said,
should have left.
right. Yes. Yes. And I think one should be taught emotional maturity at a young
Yes,
age.
be
You
taught.
know, I think, like you said, when we tell our children not to feel, by be quiet, stop
Mm-hmm.
crying,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling them to stuff feelings. When you're not expressing to them, like, hey, I know you don't agree with what I'm saying, and you don't like what I'm doing. How do you feel about that? They need to express, even if the the response is, well, mommy, I don't like it, blah 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 blah. What I'm saying? And it should be, and you can't get angry at them when they are expressing it.
Yes.
Because the heart has to have a breathing room. That's what I call it, a
Yeah.
breathing room. So if you
Right.
teach your child not to have a breathing room, then it won't have flexibility and it will always suppress itself. And
Right.
even as adults need to understand they have to give their heart breathing room, which is
Yeah.
that we're sticklers on emotions. As soon as we feel an emotion that we feel is uncomfortable, but we don't process it. We try to figure out where is it coming from on the outside. Like, who said
Mm.
this? Who did what? Somebody did something because I felt something. I felt attacked. I felt
What
threatened.
was in
So where's it coming from
it?
on the
Whose
outside of
fault?
myself?
Right.
Yeah, whose fault is it, right? But
Right.
you have to ask yourself a question.
What's
All
inside of
right, that's internal.
yeah.
So it's something's happening inside of me because something I heard, something I saw, something I touched. Something
Yeah.
touched me.
What
And
was
it
in
stimulated something inside of me, which is called a conflict, people. All right?
mm. Right. We got a caller.
Conflicts. Okay,
Um,
1 second. Conflicts are there. We call them triggers in the
mm,
psychological world.
yes.
Okay,
So
go
we
ahead,
have
take that caller. Go
triggers.
ahead, and I'll
Yes.
finish what I'm saying.
Yeah. Area code 815-666. You're live on the Female Solutions, Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green. Go right ahead with your question or comment for our host. Go right ahead.
Good morning. This is Kofi. Great conversation. I know we all are getting deep, trying to heal others. I like to always speak a solution and not always the issues. Just the other day, I saw two couples arguing, young couples, and they had a baby, and the baby was looking so stressed. The girl was grabbing the guy, and I said, "Excuse me." She said, "Mind your business." I said, "No, I want you all to do something for me real
what you're causing, you ain't bothering me. I'm laughing at you, but you're bothering your child. And it's like, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You know, one of the best things I tell people, because I do a lot of couple counseling, and I hear a lot of people out here telling people to break up, get away from each other, you don't need each other. No, when a football team comes together and they want to go out there and perform together, they're going to have a huddle. When a basketball team, before they go out on the court, they're going to sit with the coach in a timeout and make a play before they go out there. So when couples come together, they have to come together and say, when this comes up, when an issue comes up, or we might have a disagreement, or somebody else may come up and do something, what are we going to do? That's a playbook.
Yeah.
That's a playbook. And so I tell the couples out here, get together. Prayer is a playbook. Get together and always say, if this happened, or if this happened, or if that happened, or we tend to disagree. Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna stop talking. When I was young, my parents did not argue in front of us. You know what they did?
What did they do?
You probably already know that. Where do you think they go? Where do you think my parents went?
What did they do? Go in their room, shut the door, and have a private conversation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because they didn't want to throw all that off on me. I was looking at them like, what's going on? And I'm feeling all this negative energy, and sometimes the kids see their parents arguing, and guess what the kids start doing? Crying.
Yes. Because they're distressed.
Yeah. Yeah, they feel this conflict energy. So I just wanted to kind of throw in you guys' soup, saying, what are some of the things that you can do to prevent conflict before it arises? Because when you're with someone and you're going through conflict and you don't have that type of relationship because you didn't determine what type of relationship you have, you didn't determine, who are we? What are we trying to do? Are we a couple? You see what I'm saying? I like to look at situations from the aspect of after the problem occurs. I like to look at situations before it occurs to prevent it. So what are some of your techniques to prevent conflict? Ooh, now we get deep now.
Well, that's a good question. Definitely.
Your ideas to prevent conflict.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a good question, and hold on, we're gonna answer that. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I know that there are some parents who say you shouldn't argue in front of your children, but then their children don't see conflict, but then they also don't see resolution either. So there are
I
two
have
ways.
another view on that completely.
So what are
But
your thoughts? First of all, should you not argue in front of the children, or should you have the healthy discussion, but also let your children see how you resolved it? That's what my husband and I did. We argued, but we also would let our child see the resolution. See however you finally worked it out. Apologize for whatever misunderstanding, so that she could see the whole picture, and not just, okay, we don't want to see us argue. But then the child feels the tension in the house, even if you don't openly do things. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. Well, I think first of all, I think we should go back to the olden days, and because when you sit at the table and you're eating, a lot of things come out, but which
Yeah.
we don't do today. Okay,
Yeah.
we don't. Very seldom does families eat together at the same time because of the way our era has changed in our social media technology lives. Okay, so long story short, if there is a conflict between parents, there should be a discussion. Okay. If your
Yeah.
children are as early as 8 years old, 8 years old, you sit down, you say, well, that's like grown-ups need to do grown-up things, children needs to do children things. However, there's a thin line between that because you're teaching your children how to be grown-ups, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
eventually one day they're going to have some kind of similar, conversation in their life with another adult at some given point. So you can then do this to have a teaching moment out of your conflict. We're just going to call a family meeting today. We just want to
Mm,
let you know mommy and daddy is having a disagreement. Okay.
mm, mm.
Disagreement is about money, for example. Money, and this is the disagreement that we have. The reason why we're bringing it to you because we don't want you to think that mommy and daddy does not love each other. If you hear high tones and pitches in our voice, and you may because see sometimes we speak directly to each other. We're not screaming or yelling, but we're just getting our point across. So
Mhm.
this is what's happening. This is what's going on. And I want you to know we still love each other. It's just that we're working this out so we can have a mutual understanding. And we want you to know that if you are affected by this, we need to know now. How do you feel about what's happening or what kind of energy or what you're picking up? And you say, well, most people don't do that. We say go in, like you say, go in the room, close the door, and act like ain't nothing happening. Okay, which hello, the Martin children today are not like that. You can go drive down the road in the car and argue and come back. They still gonna know something is wrong, right?
Yeah, they
So you
feel
might
them.
as let the truth be told. Let the truth be told. Let it be up front. Say, okay, let's all talk about this. What do you think? I want to hear your opinion. Okay, I want to know what you feel. Now you have an active family orientated family. And you'd be surprised. Your children have good advice because children are very
Yes.
smart. You know, they have
Are.
guess well, mom, you might need not to look at dad like blah blah blah, or verse of dad not to do this, and you're not looking at them to do exactly what they say, but you want them to know that they have an involvement in your life.
That's
Now, will every situation be like that? No, there will be some mature situations that you as parents have to, especially if it's dealing with the bedroom. Okay, all right.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that's
so
definitely
if
a
it's dealing with
practice.
the bedroom, you wouldn't want to discuss that with your children. But just general discussion, discussions or disagreement, absolutely. So that's a conflict resolution for families. That's preventive tips, as he said, to get, to look at it from a different view, a different platform when it comes to families. If you're dealing also with a relationship conflict proactively, you need to ask that person when they are at rest, not when they're going back and forth, arguing back or having a disagreement, when nothing is being done. Hey, I saw that we had a disagreement the other day. I just want to know, and I'm not going to judge you before you tell me this. I want to know what was your view of that argument, and what do you feel that went wrong between the
Mm,
both of us? What
right.
is your perception of the situation, and what do you feel that went wrong between both of us? Not just what I said or what you said. What do you feel that went wrong between the both of us? Now you're going to get an open eyes view,
Yeah.
right? Open
And
eyes view, and you're going to give them that platform to speak clearly and clarity without judgment. Without
right.
judgment. Then you take that information and you're like, oh, okay. Now I understand why you were so irritated. Now I understand why we couldn't see eye to eye. It's because of this. So this is what I saw in that situation. This was my perception. And this is also what I felt. So let's take all of this and put it together and come up with a mutual, respectful understanding. So if
Mm,
we face this again, we have what is called a solution. And we
right.
can have cue
Like,
words.
mm,
Cue words saying, if I say something, by chance that you may make you uncomfortable, you say the Q word. The Q word could be, you know, I don't know, not stop or anything like that. It should be something odd, like Tinkerbell.
but you have to,
Tinkerbell.
and you have to make that a habit, because if we're
Yeah,
coming
you got to
out
make it a habit.
we're coming out of families where people didn't do any of that. People didn't have family meetings. People didn't ask their children their opinions. People didn't talk about what they felt. They just argued and called names. And we're coming out of all of that tradition. We have to unlearn that behavior, because most of us, that's what we came out of. So you're talking about learning a whole new system of relating and
Yes.
communicating that we didn't learn, and no one modeled
Yeah.
for us. So that means
Right.
doing something new that was not done. You have to set a new standard for how your family relates. We got to take one last break. But when we come back, let's talk about that, because it. Some people might say, "Oh, it's not realistic." Yes, it is. You have to decide, though. You have to decide, this is what I want my family to look like. I
Correct.
experienced
Yeah.
dysfunction. I don't want that. So now I'm going to choose to do something different when there is a differing opinion between me and my spouse, me and my significant other, and the children are involved. I'm going to change the way I respond so that I don't reproduce what I lived in childhood that was painful. So we'll be right back after this last break. And we want you all to stick and stay. I think we got another call on the line. I'm going to take you after the break. And
YouTube, subscribe. Thank you.
absolutely, Soulful Solutions on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
What if you could live to be 120 years old and remain active, healthy, alert, and vibrant? Our bodies are made up of cells that are constantly rejuvenating. So if we take proper care of ourselves, we can literally defy aging. Join us every Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time to learn about self-care from Tucson Essentials on the Female Solution Blog Talk Radio Show. Learn how to help your body and your cells feel rejuvenated each day through proper nutrition, sleep, frequency medicine, and many unconventional methods of self-care. I'm Jody Susan. Join me and my amazing guests by calling in at 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak. We'll help you achieve a breakthrough in your health today. Is Monday morning a struggle to get out of bed into the swing of things? Well, don't worry, you are not alone. It's a thought-provoking, stimulating, and mindful conversation on higher learning with Zelda Speaks for your Monday morning mindfulness sessions on Blog Talk Radio, The Female Solution, Mondays, 7:30 until 9 a.m. Be sure and send your ideas, thoughts, comments, and suggestions. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit ZeldaSpeaks.com and send us your info. We'd love to have you. Experience mindfulness moments with the mindfulness/stress relief coach, Zelda Speaks. And thanks for sharing the mindfulness moment tip of the day. Stay on purpose, stay empowered, and stay tuned to your next session of mindfulness on higher learning with Zelda Speaks. Make it a mindful day. And thanks for listening.
All right. All right. We're at the top of the hour. Welcome back to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green with my wonderful co host, Naima Latif, our executive producer of the Female Solution. And again, if you're just joining us, we are talking about emotional conflict sensitivity, the mind and the heart, the battle between the mind and the heart. Truly remarkable. But as I said, these are tips and strategies that you can incorporate in your life, especially if you have conflict between you and another person. I think one thing about the I call it the verbal cues. Verbal cues help people to immediately come responses, because our brain is verbally cued. It's like, for example, like a mantra. You said, "Here we go again," or "Do this too shall pass." You know what I'm saying? If you're in any emotional feeling overwhelmed, you should have a verbal cue for yourself instead of just kind of sulking in it, dwelling in it. Alert. It's alerting the mind, alerting the heart. Okay, hey, let's not dwell on this too long, because if we dwell on this too long, you're going to get comfortable with it. It's going to become a habit. Then it's going to go into an addiction. I think that we have 72 hours to figure anything out, and
Mm,
that's my not this does not apply to loss, such as loss and grief. When you lost a loved one, because that's a grief stage. You have to go through grief stage. But any disagreement, consequence, situation, circumstance of just commonality, disagreements, or going back and forth, altercations between individuals or even yourself, you give yourself that. I call it, like I say, heart breathing room. Heart breathing room. Okay, I'm just gonna dwell on this for a moment so I can process it. I don't think we do enough processing. We're so emotionally
react.
sensitive till we don't process. We just stay in the emotions, and those emotions kidnap us, hijack us, and before we realize it, we'll go for hours to days to weeks to months to years. I've seen people do it, and that's like, okay, if you're in this area, I feel stuck, I feel discombobulated. Okay, well, you've been emotionally hijacked by something. And the emotional hijack is when you literally attract things, because your being is that energy is inside of you, and you're
Yeah.
attracting more things to keep that energy going, because it's like we are magnets in the universe. So we're constantly
Are. Yeah.
feeling the intense of it. And most people say, well, why can't I get off my mind? It's because you're ruminating. Ruminating is that you
Mm,
went from worry to overly concerned to obsessive. Now you are ruminating. Ruminating is rolling around in your mind, rolling around in your mind. And you don't seem to be able to get that out because you create a habit of it. The brain adapts very, very quickly. It's a sponge, right? So again, mature mature emotions. Take the time to find something to cue yourself. Not just cue the other person that around you. You cue yourself when you feel you have to know your own red flags. Okay, when am I becoming emotional? Too emotional because I see them triggering. Okay,
yeah.
why is that trigger there? What's causing that trigger? What's the root cause of it? And if it's there and you're still working on it, process. Why do I feel victimized by your words,
Right.
by
And
your actions?
right.
So let me
And
process that. Should be a verbal cue. Verbal cue says, okay, hey, pay attention. Tinkerbell.
yeah, you got to realize when you've grown off the track. Now, what I learned about myself in my marriage, I thought I was a very calm person, but there are things that would trigger, and then I had an explosive temper if I suppressed my
Of
discomfort
course.
long.
Yes.
And it was like a volcano erupting. A volcano, the pressure builds and builds and builds, and then it
I get
explodes
it.
and it shoots lava all over the place. So that was what my temper was like. And I had to learn that rather than let something just fester and fester under the surface and not say anything, I had to address it when it first bothered me, and address it in a way that was not accusatory, like, well, you did this. So I had to relearn how to relate. I had to learn how to say things in a way that was not attacking. And I had to learn how to address it before so much time passed, where, like you say, it's ruminating, and I'm over,
Yeah.
the next 24, 36, 72 hours, like, he did this, he said this, he did this, he did, and I'm angry and angry and getting more and more angry. So by the time, you know, one little thing said, now I'm exploding because of all of this time of buildup of anger when I didn't say anything. So I learned that that was a very unhealthy way to deal with conflict, and that I needed to say something in the beginning and say it in a way that was not attacking, but just expressing how I perceived had happened. And usually it was a total misunderstanding, total, they saw things one way, I saw things another way. But if you let yourself get to that point of explosion, then you're saying ugly things, and you never really get to your own self. And the reason why you responded was because of something inside of you, not something that they did. And this is why we have to relearn how to relate. We have to relearn how to address a conflict or a perceived conflict. We have to
Right.
relearn how to assess ourselves. Most of us grew up in situations where, because our parents didn't know any better, they're very dysfunctional, arguing, name calling, hurtful things said, and and then you know either they decided to forgive and get over it, or they didn't forgive and the relationship ended. But either way, most of us did not learn these healthy ways of relating, and we definitely didn't understand that once you have children, they are part of the family. And if there's a differencing of opinion, or a discussion, or a decision needs to be made, we need to teach them that their feelings matter, and give them a sense of responsibility of contributing to the family's well-being. And I think that's what's
Right.
missing when we break those family units, and
Mm-hmm.
children don't see that this is a whole unit, and everybody's behavior is affecting everybody's behavior, so everybody's responsible for their own behavior and what they're contributing to the whole. That's what children need to see and experience growing up, so that when they're asked, well, we're thinking of taking a vacation this year, uh, in August, to Virginia. How do you feel about that? Well, if we do that, then I'll miss my summer camp, or whatever the case may be. Whatever the family's deciding. Well, we're thinking of selling the family car and getting something else. How do you feel about that? Or whatever the situation may be. Or we're thinking of building a swimming pool in the backyard, or we're thinking of uh,
Right. Yeah,
moving
any of those things.
schools. I mean, just whatever is
Mm-hmm.
happening that could affect their lives,
Yeah.
we should include them in the discussion and get their point of view. If nothing else, so they understand that they matter. And
Of
that's
course.
an
Yeah.
empowering thing that helps people develop that emotional maturity to
Yeah.
be able to discuss. And so family meetings may be something your family never did, because, like, well, children, it's none of your business. It's grown folks' business. Shut up. Most of us, that's how we were raised. So this is a whole new way of thinking. Oh, well, this 5-year-old, her opinion matters. Oh, this 8-year-old, his opinion matters. We didn't have that growing up, most of us. So that's a different way of thinking that we need to employ, that everybody's feelings matter. And that's a way we begin to
Right.
heal the hurt that we experience, that makes us not able to talk, because most of the time our voice was suppressed. So that's why now when we're upset, we're yelling, because we didn't learn how to express our
And
thoughts calmly.
exactly. And that's because the era we're in. We're in a total back, I mean, 15 years ago, I mean, excuse, let me go all the way back about, 30, 40 years ago. So it was totally different. It's not the same. Children, their minds are motivated by technology.
Information.
It's everything is totally different.
Yeah.
Did we have a caller on the line? You said
Yeah,
or
we got
no? Okay.
312-882. Your mic is open. Give us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Dr. Debbie Green.
Well, and Yah Shalom, Grand Rising, and Assalamu alaikum to you, Sister Naima. Yes, we can. This is Minister Plump, Chicago, Illinois.
Yes,
And
sir.
when I say yes, we can, see, back in the day, we took it to God, and we took it to the elders. And then another thing, we didn't use the wrong language, I noticed a lot of parents use the language of kids. So we are working on kicking the K word, which is kid, because it takes a village to raise one child, and no one can raise a kid. And the kid is the reason why there's much misunderstanding even in the families and in the community or the village. And we have to, as you said, name and learn better, know better, and take a different approach, because things was different 30, 40 years ago and 50 years ago. So we can learn better. We have our leadership meeting today, and atonement meeting today, and prosperity.
So, Minister Plum, let me ask you this question before we go. Let me ask you this question, Minister Plum, because we've been looking at ways of perhaps providing mentorship for those families that are not intact, and there needs to be some type of teaching mechanism for those who maybe didn't learn healthy ways of relating. So would you say that your mentorship program has men who are equipped and ready to step into that role, especially for young men who don't have healthy uh, examples of how to relate to women, how to form healthy relationships, and even, as you said, how to take their conflicts to God in a way that is spiritual and wholesome? Would you say that your organization is able to step in and do that kind of work?
Yes, we can. And we can start with the Million Man March, because I am personally challenging all of the brothers that we made a proclamation or an oath that we would keep.
Oh,
And
this.
one of them was a leadership, atonement,
Right.
as well as prosperity.
Well, we appreciate that. We definitely appreciate that, and we want to encourage more of that. So thank you so much for calling, and we'll see you Saturday at the Soulful Chicago Book Fair. Yes, we'll be broadcasting live from there, and with our host Anna, who will be joining us live from London. And but there's a lot of people who are needed to step into those roles and teaching us different ways of relating and inclusion, because the era that we come out of, there was a lot of attitudes, women should just be silent, or be submissive, shut up, do as you're told. Children, you need to be seen and not heard. Your opinion doesn't matter. And so, like you said, Dr. Debbie, this is a different era where people understand that all life matters. Everyone's rights have to be respected. We live in an information age where children have knowledge and information coming to them all day long on their devices. So we have to develop different skills and different ways of relating, so that respect is the underlying message that everyone learns. And then learning how to speak respectfully to each other is a skill that has to be learned if it wasn't demonstrated in your home. And more of our relationships would last if there was mutual respect taught as a way of life. And it's difficult to demonstrate that if the relationship has already ended, and there's already anger, and there's already trauma that the child is living with, because one parent is absent and the other parent is in the house angry and you're feeling that vibration all the time, and you're feeling the abandonment if the other person doesn't come around anymore because they don't want to deal with the pain of the broken relationship. So too many of our families are living with that. So are there any ways that we can heal from that hurt, if that is the experience that we had growing up, or if that's the experience we're giving our children now because of our relationship ending? Is there a way we can circumvent them growing up to be that dysfunctional adult that never emotionally matured?
Again, it's all about whether that person wants to be emotionally available for themselves. And, really be honest with you, these are two different topics that we have been incorporating today. You were really focusing on family, and I was focusing on the individual in relationships, but it's okay because it's still dealing with relationships. But the goal was to help remove the conflicting areas as adults, because if you don't rear your child in a certain type of way, it will have massive effects of conflict from internal as well as external. So you can't go back and fix a child. There's no
No.
way you can do that. Whatever damage has been already done has been done. The person as an adult has to then look at their life, saying with a microscopic lens and say, okay, what's my conflicts that I have acquired over the years as being a child, as being in a dysfunctional family or whatever the case is, so I can see what triggers me in life. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's the
Yeah.
first thing. One has to start with themselves. And once
Right.
they acknowledge and accept those things, because some people are still living in denial. No, it's not me, it's them. So if it's always not me, it's them, then you still gonna be the victim. You're never
Right.
going to stop being a victim until you stop pointing the finger. So if you remove that victim mentality, what it's going to do is open up a wider view of your vision emotionally as well as mentally and spiritually to see yourself from a different platform, a different view. And then you're like, okay, I am responding or reacting to my external stimuli like this. And that
Mm.
like this may not be what you want, right? So I know it's there. I hear it, I see it, but why am I letting it get the best of me? That's the question. Why am I allowing it to change my words, to change my actions, to change how I feel just by that moment in time? You see what I'm saying? So that
Yeah.
moment in time then goes and it starts to dwindle, starts to bleed into the next day and the next day and the next day. That's how arguments take on conflicts in the first place, because we don't have enough mutual understanding nor emotional maturity to say, hey, okay, I was affected, not hurt or injured. I was affected by your words and your actions. And I want to deal with that. I want to deal with that. I don't think you, because guess what? I can't change you. I can only change myself. Because if I'm looking for you to change to please me, then again, I'm saying I want to remain the victim and I want that issue to change so that it can leave me outside of myself. Okay, but guess what? That ain't going to help the situation, because there's going to be another situation other than that person that you may, come in contact with in the world. So here we are, conflicted, right? The conflict needs to be handled internally. That's what conflict resolution does. It helps us to handle it internally. Let me check my triggers. Let me find out what buttons are there. What's the root cause of the buttons? Why am I doing this? Why am I responding like this? How many times have I responded? What's my frequency? Am I doing it with habitual thinking? Am I doing it with because I'm just reacting because I'm impulsive? Okay, all of those questions need to be answered for you to find conflict resolution. Otherwise, you're going to keep
90
on doing
seconds.
the same things. So, again, check yourself before you wreck yourself. How about that? I love you. I love you. Like I said, we is process, baby.
Yeah.
We
Yes, we.
all in process.
We've got to call up a
Yes,
rally.
yes, yes.
So, sorry. Join us again tomorrow. Yeah, we always tell you make sure you tune in early and press
60
one early
seconds.
because we've got to go. But once again,
Absolutely.
for calling in, make sure you press one before 10 minutes to the hour so you can have time enough to say what you have to say and address your thoughts. But of course, thanks to all of you all who've listened in and called in
Peace.
and commented. And we'll see you again tomorrow for health and well-being with Viata. See you next
We've come
time.
to the end of our show today, but you can hear every show in the archives at www.blogtalkradio.com /the-female-solution.